right, so first, let's cover preservation versus improvement.
Okay. That preservation and in a bigger way, defining what is the true to type in this breed of American Bulldog is probably one of the biggest questions that most of the breeders, I don't think, ask. They believe their type of dog, whatever they're breeding, is true to type, pure, whatever you want to say. Unfortunately, I think it's a modern phenomenon that most breeds, like AKC type show dogs, they believe breeding for type, breeding correct type or true to type in a breed is solely cosmetics, color, head type, ear set, tail, top line. And those things do contribute to type, but in a working breed, true to type, more important than anything, is performance. It's intelligence, temperament. Because if you don't have, if a working dog doesn't function correct, then you don't have that breed. I've probably said this before, but if you have a Labrador that can't swim or won't retrieve a duck or fowl, it's not a good representative. It's not true to type. If you've got a Border Collie that won't herd sheep, you don't have a very good Border Collie. If you got a sled dog that doesn't run, it can't handle the cold weather, you probably don't have a very good sled dog. Same as, if you have a game bred pit bull and it won't scratch, it's not game, it won't fight, then it's probably not a good dog. In the old days, those guys called those curs. They wouldn't even call it a breed. They would call it just a cur. Until the dog's proven game, it's not a bulldog. So in American Bulldogs, the breed came together. I've gone over before. Scott and Johnson set out to preserve this breed that had been in the United States for a long time. It hadn't been in the United States as a modern breed. It was more of like a type, and it wasn't bred like modern breeds. It was bred what was available and what worked. So some people today would be like, well, that dog's not pure, this and that. The purity was the function, the workability. If the dog could do the work and it acted and functioned like the breed should, then it was a bulldog. Even Johnson and Scott had said before that when they started out, they gathered up as many of these dogs as they could. And, Johnson claimed that after the war, it was, they were scarce. Not a lot of them were around, which makes sense because, people were coming off the farms, the industrial age had started, people were moving to the cities. They didn't bring their working dogs with them. Mm-hmm. And so there wasn't as much of a job for the dogs anymore. So when they set out to preserve the breed, they traveled wherever they could to find the best dogs they could. But not all those dogs were line bred, pure dogs. Mac the Masher had no pedigree. Dick the Bruiser had no pedigree. And everything that they bred had no pedigree. So they were just purpose bred for the purpose. If they threw in American Pit Bull Terrier once, if they put a Plot Hound in or Catahoula or a Bird Dog or whatever worked, that wasn't seen as anything, because they were just breeding for themselves anyway. They were breeding for purpose. It's very similar to the way a lot of the hog hunters, even today, have their dogs and breed. They don't really give a shit about papers or claiming they have, pure dogs or show dogs or registered dogs. They only care about what the dog will do for them in the hunt. If it functions and makes their job and makes their hunting a lot easier, then they're a good dog. I have a friend, he's a hog hunter, and several years ago, he has a really nice dog for me that's a proven catch dog. And several years ago, he was telling me that he sent him to Alabama to a hog hunter that he's known for years. And the guy wanted to use him on his females because he needed to catch dogs. His dogs were getting old. So I'm like, oh, well, what did he breed? How are those dogs bred? Because I just assumed it was an American Bulldog. And he said, oh, I don't know. I have to ask him. So he sent me a picture of the dog, and one of the dogs was blue. And obviously it looked like a pit bull. It looked like just a common pit bull, not really super game bred or anything. And obviously if it was blue, it had some UKC pit or Amstaff in it somewhere.
Right.
So when he asked the guy says, well, I have no idea. We're just, we've just bred dogs that work to dogs that work and dogs that work to dogs that work for several generations. If they work, we call them Bulldogs. They're not registered, and we don't plan on registering them. So that's kind of how they bred dogs. Everything from blackmouth curs to plot hounds to real working dogs that people actually, knock the tail game down and pull them off, and they go on the field and work. So that's kind of what the breed was like. So true to type has more to do with its functionality. It should for any working breed. Any working breed, that's the most important thing. Not the color, not the style of their head or the type of ears or their tail, silly cosmetic stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of ding-dongs out now, unfortunately. A lot of the younger people, I don't know. I think it's just society's perpetuated this. I have a purebred AKC, blah, 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 whatever. And, you go to these dog shows and they're always talking about type and type and type, but they're always talking about cosmetics. And really that type of thought process has destroyed so many working breeds because they narrow it down to some cookie cutter, bubblehead that looks pretty. And that's about it. All the best working dogs all over the world aren't bred the way we breed our purebred AKC show type dogs. And the criteria for selection in these, the dogs that work in the Iditarod, the Huskies up in Alaska that run and actually function and actually work, they don't look like a Siberian Husky that you would see at a dog show. They vary a whole lot in color and type. But like I said, they just breed them for the work. The best dog gets bred. And so the true to type American Bulldog, early on, I guess back in the late 80s, I used to buy videotapes from different breeders. And probably the guy that, if people wanted to research him, he probably explains, I think, true to type in the breed better than anybody is a guy that he's dead now. His name was Bill Heinz. I got a video of his years ago, and he calls it educating the dude, but everything he said in there is what I found to be true when I really dig down and find old timers or people that describe the breed in interviews, stuff that Johnson has said, stuff that Alan Scott has said, and anybody that's been in the breed a long time. The American Bulldog was, first and foremost, they used him as a catch dog, either on the farm or hunting wild boar or bringing in wild cattle. Evidently, there was a time in the United States when they didn't have a lot of fences, so in the fall, after they brought in the crops, they just brand their cattle and let it go. And then in the spring, they catch them up and bring them back, or they catch one up and butcher it in the wintertime if they needed to. So they have the dogs for that. And then they hunted wild boar, and that was a good source of food. And so the breed is, some people are like, well, you can get any dog at the pound and, a pit bull cross and it'll catch, which there's some validity that, a game bred pit will catch, absolutely, but some of them are just too small, 40 pounds, 47 pounds, even 50 pounds. On these big hogs, they'll just run away with the dog like an earring. They don't hold and stop is what they're really supposed to do. And I've heard a lot of game dogs, sometimes they're not the best catch dog, because a good catch dog will run in, grab a hold of the jowl or the ear, and become basically like a boat anchor. It's going to hold that wild boar. It's not going to try to fight it. It's not going to get in front of it and try to rebite. And, there's no dog that's going to kill a big wild boar of any kind. They're way outmatched. They have sharp cutters. They can slash a dog up. That's why they put Kevlar collars and Kevlar vests on them, so they don't get slashed up and killed. And so you want a dog that will run in, grab it, and become a boat anchor. A really good one will jump side by side. They'll lay their body on the side of the pig, and as the pig turns, they turn with it. But they're always pulling back and holding. Once the bulldog catches, some of the bay dogs might jump in and hold too. So by the time the hunter comes up, one hunter will pick up the back legs, the other one will stab them behind the front leg, which usually goes right through to the heart and lungs and kills them in a matter of seconds. So that is kind of what you want. You want a bulldog that has zero hesitation, zero self-preservation. They'll run right in, grab a hold, and hold. They won't try to rebite and fight the pig. I've heard idiots make comments on when I post a video or a picture of my dogs that are like, that's cruel. I don't believe in hog and dog fighting. I'm like, it's not a fight. I mean, a fight would, if you have a dog that wants to fight a wild boar, they're going to get killed. Because if they let go, that a hog has an opportunity to just slash them. And even if they have a Kevlar vest on, especially if they get behind where there's no protection, they'll disembowel a dog. So an American bulldog needs to be gritty and game, and when it bites and holds, it's got to hold for everything it's got, not let go, and that will save the hog hunter from any danger of getting slashed up himself. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy. It's on one hand, the dog is very game and brave and tenacious, and he just runs in with zero hesitation. And on the other hand, after the pig's dead, they need to chill out. They have to have a good off switch. A good off switch really is something that is super important in the American Bulldogs, because if you're hunting hogs, you want the dog to chill out, load up, and you're going to go hunt and hopefully find another hog that he can catch. And also practical, for being practical, I've seen hog dogs come home covered in blood, and the hunter's kids are jumping all over them and hogging on them, and they're wonderful with kids and their family. And an hour or 2 hours earlier, they were grabbing a hold of the devil, a big wild boar. If you've ever been in the woods and 150, 200, 300 pound wild boar runs by you, it is scary. I mean, it's scary because that animal could slash you. It could cut a main artery in your leg. They'll bite you. They're vicious. Like they run up and eat, newborn calves and fawns. If they cut the skin on a dog, they'll eat it alive. Pigs are some vicious stuff, but a wild boar is like super crazy athlete. They have a hide that is like iron, And they have these cutters that can be big tusks or they can be little tusks, but they just can sharpen them and they're like a razor. So you need a dog that can run in, catch, and is reliable. Like, they're not going to get spooked because it's a big pig, or this pig smacks them, they don't get a good bite the first time. The pig might flip them 15 feet in the air, but when they hit the ground, they're going to run right back and hold on to that pig. So that is a definition of the dog, that really good on and off switch, great with this people and kids, good catch dog, just a smart dog. A lot of interviews that I've watched and on old timers that somebody's interviewed, and I've never been for just American Bulldogs. I've seen them for, the White English, for a Lappahaw, which they're all basically trying to preserve that Southern Bulldog, working Bulldog. So to me, true to type are those descriptions. The dog's got to be athletic enough to run in there and grab a pig and hold on, and avoid getting slashed. And then they have to have the stamina to do it again, because you may go hog hunting and catch 5 hogs if you're lucky that day. So the dog has to have cardio. It has to have heat tolerance, which nowadays that's the biggest problem, because the number one type that is bred are the extreme bully dogs, which, I started out in extreme bully dogs, and I love them. I love the look. I've had a bunch of them. They're cool dogs, but they're not true to type. They're not really what the breed was. They're kind of they're the result of Johnson, and basically he met David Levitt, I believe, in the late 70s. And David Levitt was trying to create the Old English Bulldog that he has. And he wanted to use 2 American Bulldogs from Johnson to breed to this English Bulldog that he found called West Champs High Hopes. West Champs High Hopes, I think, was a big English Bulldog. Originally, they described him as a longer-legged, athletic throwback. They call him a throwback, but years later, we found pictures of him. He was not a throwback to anything. His parents are AKC champion line, little tiny sour mug, smash face turds. They're not anything that could ever work. And even though West Champs High Hopes was supposed to be a pretty big dog, when you see the picture of him, you see he's got no muzzle, flat face, just a typical AKC English Bulldog, which is the most mutated, unhealthy, unnatural breed of dog in the world, plagued with most of the outrageous, weird problems there are. Number one is breathing. They die of overheating all the time. They have to live in air conditioning. So Johnson leased 2 of his females, and Levitt had those 2 litters, and then he had a litter with a Scott dog called Pepper Pot. And he gave Mr. Johnson all the puppies that he didn't want in all the litters that he did. Even these litters he did, the other strain that he did was pit-bulldog bull mastiff female, bred to an English Bulldog also. So Johnson had those dogs. So in the early 80s, he had all of his dogs down off of that English Bulldog cross were called either Machine or Sugardale. The females were Sugardale. The males had Machine in the name. His first popular stud, he was 25% English Bulldog, was a dog called Johnson's Incredible Mean Machine. He was like a big dog. Johnson said he was 120, so he could have been 100 or 90 pounds. He was a big dog. And he had a scrunched up face. He looked more Englishy, but he didn't have a super short muzzle, because I don't think Johnson really cared for the super short muzzle. But And then he had these Sugar Doll girls, Sugar Doll 3, Sugar Doll 6, Sugar Doll 10, and they were pretty bully. And all those dogs were either 50% English Bulldog or 25% English Bulldog. He line bred on that stuff, but he never crunched it below 25 or higher than 25%. Most of them came out to about 25%. So in the 80s and 90s, his machine style dogs, which were really not purebred American Bulldogs, they had a huge percentage of English Bulldog, because there was already English Bulldog in there, possibly from, the turn of the century or early 1900s. So those dogs were very popular. Incredible Mean Machine, the Red Machine, all those dogs had that sour mug Bulldog look. Well, Johnson lived in Georgia, and it gets extremely hot there. So his dogs naturally culled, a lot of those dogs only lived to maybe sire 1 or 2 litters. The Incredible Mean Machine, I think the only dog he had that sired quite a few of that type, that machine type, was Red Machine. And Red Machine was only 1/8 West Champs, I hope. So he was a little bit lower, but he had a big wishbone front end, kind of a skinny ass, real sour muggy looking face, but not as short muzzled as what you see nowadays. So about 25 years ago, everybody was wanting those machine type dogs. So I call it the bully movement, the extreme bully movement. Everybody selected for that type and more extreme. And of course, I know of several English Bulldogs that were crossed in again, Bull Mastiff. They're not on the paperwork, and I don't know of how many. There's probably a whole lot more than I ever knew, but I knew of one guy in particular who he had bought a dog and paid a lot of money for it. That was, everybody, liked it. He looked like a giant English Bulldog. His name was Got the Gat, and he was all 100% Johnson. And he was kind of a throwback to more of the English Bulldog stuff. Well, like a lot of English Bulldogs, that dog was sterile. And I'm not sure he ever sired a litter. If he did, it was when he was young, maybe 1 or 2 litters. But after that, he was just sterile. And I have it on pretty good information that guy had bought a Bull Mastiff female from a really good breeder of show Bull Mastiffs. And the guy bred English Bulldogs. He had English Bulldogs. And so he crossed an English Bulldog to a Bull Mastiff. And he said it was from that dog, Got the Gat. Well, his son, fake son, was a red dog called Jumanji. He was a weird looking dog. He had like extra loose face. He had a tail that curled over his back, and he had like a bunch of wrinkles at the base of his tail, almost like a Shar-Pei. And evidently he was the opposite of the Gat. He'd sire litters, he'd breed anything and have puppies. So I know that got injected. Some of them were, sought after dogs, and some of them were pretty decent dogs. But anytime you line breed on that stuff, you're just going to get worse and worse breeding dogs, because the breed already had a lot of brachiocephalic airway syndrome problems that you get with English Bulldogs. So nowadays, the biggest percentage of type American Bulldogs that are bred the most and sell the most and are the most sought after are these extreme bully type dogs, machine type dogs. They're usually always 7/8 Johnson on paperwork. They're 7/8 Johnson or more, sometimes up to 15/16. Usually they just have one tiny sliver of this dog called Sheena that was a painter dog. It was an inbred Sergeant Rock dog. And for some reason, and it's kind of, if you listen to my other interviews that talk about the outcross and how it frees up genes that you haven't seen in a long time, that kind of happened over and over in the beginning of this bully movement. Some of the most extreme dogs were 3/4 Johnson, 1/4 painter. or 7/8 Johnson, 1/8 Painter. There was a dog, a well-known dog that a guy out in Colorado, was a weight pull guy, had. He got it from this guy, Kyle Sims, in California. Kyle Sims had bought a bunch of Johnson dogs, but he wasn't impressed with a lot of them. You know, some of them couldn't breathe with the crap. Some of them just didn't have any drive, like some English Bulldogs might not. And then he bought some Painter dogs, and he started crossing them back and forth. And he's the guy that invented the term hybrid in American Bulldogs. And hybrid just meant he thought the key to success, and he may have been right on a lot of points, was to take the Johnson dog, who was more civil, had more to do better in protection man work, and cross it to the Scott types. Painter type is what he had, and you get a best of both worlds. But so he called them hybrids because there were two different types bred together. So he had a dog called Rippin' Woody that he got from Mr. Johnson. Big, giant, tall dog, really bad conformation. He was cross-eyed and he was nasty. Like he had that civil drive, and if you agitated him, you know, they bred the crap out of him. They bred into anything and everything. And Kyle Sims even claimed that, you know, Woody would put the bite in a beagle. So if you bred him to a beagle, he would do bite work and stuff. And like I said, it was probably more the Mastiff blood, and the English blood too tends to have some of that. They're a little quicker to being man aggressive and doing bite work than the Scott type, usually. Not always, but usually. So this Rippin' Woody was bred to this bitch called Sheena. Sheena was an inbred Sergeant Rock. Sergeant Rock was from Joe Painter, and it was basically what he got when he bought Alan Scott's yard and bred. He produced that dog. Sergeant Rock he thought was the best, and he bred Sergeant Rock to his daughter and produced this bitch called Sheena. And Sheena was bred to Rippin' Woody and produced a bunch of nice bully dogs. A dog called Freddy Krueger, White Fang, this nasty dog that went to the East Coast, and people rumor that it was bred into performance American Bulldogs, but not given credit, called Grimlock. And then the guy out in Colorado got this dog called Gator Red, and he did weight pull with Gator. Gator was like a 114-pound dog, pretty impressive. And when Gator was bred back to the 100% Johnson dogs, this dog called Doozy, it produced these big, huge dogs that were bigger and more impressive than anything you saw in Johnson's yard, but they tended to be bullier, shorter muzzled. There was a dog called Iron Man Tyson that was probably the most popular. There was a dog called Ashton Jackson that was bred one time and then overheated and died. A dog called Bushwhacker, same thing, he overheated and died. A dog called Bull that was a monster, like 120 pounds. And I saw a video of him, and the dog's breathing was so bad that he would have to stop breathing to hear stuff. Like he'd stop breathing to hear slight noises. And that dog was sold for like $5,000 or $6,000 to a friend of mine that was in Oklahoma. They had him for a little while, but the dog, I don't know if somebody did some kind of shitty bite work with him or what it was, but they had him about a week or two. He didn't like the guy's wife, and the guy never trusted him that well. And he had him in his yard, and he was moving boxes, like breaking down boxes and moving them. And he went to go open the gate and go through the gate with the boxes, and the dog, the guy claimed the dog's eyes rolled the back of his head, and he flew at him and charged him to attack him and smashed him in between the gate and the post and knocked his glasses off and scared the hell out of him. So they put him down. And but that type of dog, that 3/4 Johnson, 1/4 Painter, seemed to produce way more typey and extreme towards the machine stuff than the modern Johnson dogs did at that time. So those dogs were bred off of heavily. There was another one, a guy named John Blackwell. He says he went down to Alabama and bought whole litters of puppies at the time. You could buy white bulldog type dogs down there, he said, for $100 a piece. And he'd buy the whole litters, and he said anything that didn't look like a pit bull that he liked, he raised. And he raised this dog called Polar Bear, who kind of looked Great Danish, almost doggo-ish. And he bred that to a Johnson female, produced this dog called Deacon. And Deacon was bred to 100% Johnson dog and produced a super bully dog who was real aggressive, outgoing, pretty good with man work and stuff, called Bruiser Beau. He was English bulldoggy, but pretty athletic. And then that Bruiser Beau produced a dog called Bulldozer Beau, bred back to some of that Gator Doozy stuff, and produced this dog. Bulldozer Beau had a huge, beautiful bully head, kind of a big dog. He died. They took him to a dog show, and he overheated and died. And so that was the beginning of kind of all these breeding for that bully type, which is kind of if you're trying to preserve a breed or you're trying to improve a breed, that machine type dog, those 25 to 50% English bulldog crosses, those aren't really American bulldogs. That's not a historical dog, but that is what everybody wants. They want that freaky, big-headed, muscled up, sour, muggy looking dog. So if you're really breeding true to type, those dogs are not true to type. That's a subset of result of an English bulldog cross. And like I said, a whole bunch of other people have crossed Oldie and English. Some of it's come out with these tri-colored dogs that you'll see nowadays. And they always trace back to like two different strains. Both of those people had tri-colored English and tri-colored Old English bulldogs. And so it's pretty evident you're not going to get tri-colored unless you have it on both sides of the pedigree. And, there's not the rarity of tri in an American bulldog was non-existent. So that proves pretty much, that had been done. And who knows how many English bulldogs or Old English bulldogs somebody put in there, because the pursuit of extreme American bulldog breeders is bully looks, period. They make excuses for the dogs can't breathe. They fall over dead from overheating, and they don't talk about that, or they'll make up a story about something. So
sure.
But it's been hundreds every year, hundreds and hundreds of them die. Because I'm one of the few people that talks about it. I get a lot of emails and people contact me and they're like, yeah, we lost our dog. And, at the emergency room, they said he overheated. We never thought, we never knew. Nobody told us anything. So it happens all the time. And so a lot of talk of purity and a lot of shit talk about anybody that uses standard blood or anybody who's accused of crossing pit bull in, there's all kinds of, that stuff happened. I know it happened because I know of different instances in the flip side, in the standard type, where people put a lot of game bred dog in, I think. There's rumors of doggo. There's rumor of a walker hound. But I will say on that side, when you're putting that, if you were to do those crosses, you're doing it to help the breed be stronger and healthier. You're not doing it just to make a buck. Whereas on the bully side, maybe not all of them are trying to make a buck. Maybe it's just that's their passion. That's what they love, which I do too. I started out with those freaky bully dogs. I have freaky bully dogs now, and I do love them, but I just got to the point where it's like, I don't want a dog that somebody's going to take for a walk and it's going to die. You know, I want a dog that can, I don't have to breed, you know, absolute dream of a catch dog, which I've done that. I've had dogs like that I produce, but I just like to produce a dog that's going to live in a family setting, go hiking, go on camping trips. You know, it doesn't have to run marathons in the Sahara Desert, but I don't want it to fall over dead, you know, because it's a little hot outside and it got excited. So when people talk about true to type, breeding for type, my dogs all look the same, blah, 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 you know, it's all silly nonsense. I get sick of hearing it. And, you know, I get a lot of people with me because I have been outcrossing to standard blood since 1999. The first outcross I did was to a line called Man of War, which is a heavy colored line of American Bulldogs. And I'm sure they have game dogs in them. They may have whatever. There's been rumors that Man of Wars, you know, pit bull, Amstaff. I even heard somebody say greyhound, which greyhound's another thing I get accused of, you know, because I had one breed report come back that said greyhound, which I don't know. That was a silly thing, but it was 20 years ago and the dog was like less than 1/8. So, but you still get these people like, that's a mutt, you know. It's like.
Let me ask you this though. Now, mind you, I've had my, you know, a few litters over the years, you know. But when I use my imagination and I'm thinking about just breeds in general, I've always been under the impression that a good solid performance type bulldog of any type, whether it's, you know, the performance type American Bulldog, the American Pit Bull Terrier, the Amstaff, I've always been under the impression that that blood can improve any breed.
I think any working dog, you know, they're in Europe. I forget what they call it, KMVP. I have several friends that are big time trainers. They're a little older now, so they're not as in it as much maybe, but they're professional trainers. They stay on top of all the stuff that's going on, the big trials in Europe. And they'll say they used to lie. A lot of the people used to lie and just cross up stuff and say it's a Dutch Shepherd. And now they don't care. Now they'll put mix in there. And when they talk about a lot of these top working sport dogs, it comes out that they've crossed American Bulldog in there, that they've crossed game bred pit bull in there, that they've crossed greyhound in there, that they've crossed I forget, Staffy bull, you know, and the dogs look like Malinois or Dutch Shepherds. And I've even read stuff where people ask, why would you put those breeds in there? Like, well, the American Bulldog usually is put in there more for have more fight drive for man. The game bred dogs are put in there more for prey drive. Same with the greyhound. So just like those Iditarod dogs, they breed. All they're concerned about is breeding the best performance dog, which is the way dogs were bred for the millennium. They've been bred, and that's what made great German wire-haired pointers, you know, all these field trial dogs that are fantastic. In the United States, here we have some amazing homemade breeds of blackmouth cur. I've seen a lot of those because a lot of the hog hunters use them as bay dogs. I've seen some that I'm like, wow, that is just such an impressive dog. They run forever and they breathe great. They'll catch, they'll find a pig, you know. They're just incredible animals. So it's kind of, in American Bulldogs, we had a subgroup or half the breed when it started out, Joe Painter and Steve Leclerc and Larry Cora, a whole bunch of these, Kirshner, a bunch of these guys. They wanted to see the American Bulldog be a true working dog, a performance dog. I'm not going to accuse any of them of anything, but I know they all crossed stuff in there. And a lot of it was probably game dogs and something huge. And I think they found dogs maybe that were big that they crossed in. I think it was the saving fucking grace to the breed, to be honest with you. Because I've probably mentioned my friend Jeff Beavers. He's got a line of dogs called Bullhead in Pennsylvania, and they're basically the Painter, Leclerc, Spama Boy, line bred stuff. And they are big. They're big. Like, I've been on his yard, and I look around, I'm thinking, geez, this would be Johnson's dream. Like, he liked them big. You know, they're like 100. A male in his yard would be up 100 to 120 pounds. And they're big because he line bred off this huge dog he started out with as a teenager. He got this dog called Brimstone. And Brimstone was a big dog, like 120-pound dog that they sold him to some pet people, I think in Arizona. And the people lived like in a condo with a big, you know, some kind of a big courtyard in the back. And if you've ever been to Arizona, you see a lot of people they don't have fences. They have cinder block walls that go up 6-8 feet. Well, the people next door had an Akita, and when the puppy, Brimstone was a puppy, the Akita beat him up, hurt him. And then Brimstone grew up, and I think he hit about 10 months, and he jumped over the wall and beat the shit out of the Akita. So they had to send him back to the breeder, and then the breeder sent him to a dentist. I don't know what adventures he got into at the dentist, and then that guy didn't want him, so that's when Jeff bought him. And Jeff tested him on hogs, on bite work, really anything he could. And so the dog was really supposed to be a super nice dog. So he line bred off of that dog, and that dog was a Bama Boy Painter type dog. Obviously had something huge in there, because they're as tight as he bred. He's bred as tight as any game bred pit bull guy's ever bred, and he doesn't really lose size a whole lot. Like today, his males are big, and they are an incredible performance dog. If I knock them at all, they're maybe a little too. I've placed a lot of them with hog hunters, and their only complaint is I had a guy. I had this dog Fred that I got from Jeff, and I love Fred. And Fred was an oddity because Fred was actually a runt. He just gave me the dog. I picked up these other two. And he said, if you want him, and I'm like, yeah, sure. Because I thought, well, we'll try them all out, see who works out. Well, I love Fred the best. He was considered a runt, but he got to be about 90 pounds. And I liked him because a lot of those bullhead dogs, they have a switch, and when it flips, they have tunnel vision. Like if another dog, they're not usually outwardly dog aggressive, but like if another dog, tries to dominate them or growls at them, it's on, and it's like they have tunnel vision. They don't see anything else or care about anything else. They're gonna take care of the threat. And so I've had hog hunters. This guy had Fred, who was an excellent catch dog, and actually worked out great for him. When I gave him to him, he was an adult, and I said, look, if he gets dog aggressive, don't leave him in the woods. Call me. I don't care if it's 3:00 in the morning. I'll drive out and come get him. But he worked out great. Like I'd always ask, how's Fred doing? Has he shown any dog aggression or anything? He goes, no. He said, when we're out hunting, he's fantastic. He knows the job. He said, I've had trouble, at my house with some of these blackmouth curs starting trouble with them, but Fred doesn't. He's not looking for trouble, but he'll end the trouble when somebody tries to mess with him. So, and he was, to me, had a little more sense. He wasn't so absolutely game crazy. as some of the other ones I've had. I've had some other ones from Jeff that are like, whoa. But that whole mindset was the performance guy. You know, there used to be a registry called the Game Bred American Bulldog Registry, and they were promoting the Game Bred American Bulldog. So they thought the American Bulldog should be game like a pit bull, which they are in some ways, but not like they should. I don't think they should be game like a pit bull, and I don't think they should be rolled, or that the gameness should be proven on a wild boar, on a hog hunt, and they should be game to just get in there, grab a hold of the pig, hold it, not let go, and do the job they're supposed to do. Not fight another dog and not kill, you know, try to kill a pig. You know, they're made to just grab and hold, and they should have a really good off switch. So that's the only complaint I've had with bullhead, is they're so absolute. The guy who had Fred, he called me one day and he was like, I know why they call these dogs bullhead. They got a bull, they're bullheaded. And I've heard that complaint before. And but I had a dog from Jeff called Dose, and I got him as an adult. Actually, my friend Mario got him. I didn't really know, and I think they were trying to get him to a hog hunter. And then Mario bought him, and then I wanted to breed to him because he was from a real successful litter, but he was a little cobbier, a little stockier, a little smaller, but not as long of a muzzle. And he just had he just had the best temperament. It's really cool. So first I talked Mario. Mario's a friend of mine down in Arkansas. I talked him into, you know, getting 2 studs on him, and I could take him and kept him on my yard. And then I just fell in love with the dog. Like, I put him in the car, and he would ride with me in the van and just be perfect. And he was raised on a chain, so he's kind of a chain brain. You know, when you went to go get him off the chain, you know, you had to be careful because he would get hyper and jump all over you. And he was obsessed with Kong toys and balls. He always had a ball or a Kong toy in his mouth. And I after I had him for a while, eventually I bought him and had him till he got older. And then Mario wanted to breed to him, so I sent him back to Mario. But he's just the coolest freaking dog. Like, whatever you wanted him to do, he wanted to do it. He was loyal, sweet, just a sweetheart. But he had that switch that would flip, that, you know, if another dog challenged him or growled at him, you know, he took it too serious, and he was raring to go. But I tell you, puppies, he was great with puppies. If a female doesn't want to mess with him, he's fine. He even got loose one time with my dog Real Deal. I drove up the driveway, and I saw, oh man, Real Deal's loose. And then I saw Dose, and my heart just about, I almost had a heart attack because I wasn't sure. You know, at first they run up, I thought, oh my God, he just got out. They're going to kill each other. But no, they've been running around for a while. And I guess Real Deal was kind of a younger dog, and he didn't challenge Dose. And Dose, if he's not going to get challenged or growled at, he's fine. But I used him quite a bit as an outcross. I've used quite a few different, I think about 4 or 5 different strains of American Bulldogs that are standard type. So I get all kinds of shit. I have dogs that are heavy colored from the Man-O-War stuff. And I have dogs that they're not as typey, so they're not as smash-faced or short-muzzled. And, you know, the bully crowd goes crazy because, like I said, I started out for years and years. I was producing some of the most extreme popular dogs out there, and now I've been on this kick for a healthier, more functional type dog. And
sure.
And I talk about bad breathing and just what I said, where the American Bulldog bully type really isn't true to type. And those are all things that these dudes don't want to hear. So they talk shit about me. Oh,
sure.
Yeah, got the paper hanger, you know, dog crosser, whatever.
Right. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I think if a man is feeding his dogs, I mean, not saying that it's true or anything like that. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, if a man is owning dogs, feeding dogs, taking care of the dogs, he should be able to do what he wants with his dogs within the confines of, morality and, legality and making sure the dogs are healthy. But last time we jumped on, we had the technical difficulties, so we couldn't upload that one. But I asked you about, and I wanted you to reiterate, do you think there's a difference between a dog raised indoors and a dog raised outdoors?
There's some difference, different ways to raising dogs, different experiences day to day, I think can mold their personality a little different. But their core, the more I'm into breeding these dogs, the core genetic temperament, type, quirks, whatever, they're set. I mean, I see dogs, I see behavior that's exactly what a dog that I line bred off of 25 years ago did. It just freaks me out. It's so weird how much of this is genetic. But I think personally, I like an American Bulldog that's raised outside. I have, some acreage, and I don't have a kennel. I have big yards. Everybody's got huge yards. So I usually pair them up, male, female. And, a couple of the pens I have are probably about a third of an acre. And so the dogs are 24/7. They have a manger, and inside the manger is an igloo dog house. And they have usually big troughs of water and a 50-pound automatic feeder, so they can eat as much as they want, drink as much as they want, and play as much as they want. And they're in the elements, I've recently, in my old age, tried to get in better shape. So I've gotten into all kinds of, I do CrossFit a couple times a week. And so I'm into all the new thinking, prolonging your life. I'd like to
Of
live.
course.
I don't want to live forever, but I just want to live healthy not be in the hospital.
You want to at least get as many years as you can. But
Yeah,
my question more or less was like, do you think there's as far as indoor versus outdoors, do you think there's a difference in health or a difference in grit or any of that?
Oh yeah. I think a dog that's sitting in a crate for 6, 8, 10 hours a day versus a dog that's out in the elements 24/7, running, playing, causing hell, whatever they're doing, destroying things most of the time, what my bulldogs seem to do. They're a whole lot stronger. Their tendons are stronger, their muscle tone, everything. Their bone density is better. It's like what I was getting at with this, all the health benefits. I listened to all podcasts about all these prolonged, all these health things. And, at the gym, there's a guy that's one of the coaches. He's got a sauna that he does this thing called fire and ice, where, you get in this ice tub for 3 minutes and you work on your breathing, and then you get in the sauna for so many minutes. And so the gist of all these experts now are like, when you throw your body into shocking survival, extreme cold, extreme heat, when you exercise, everybody knows there's so many benefits to exercising, but it all is because it's a resistance. It's suffering. It's not laying on the couch and taking it easy and air conditioning. It's pushing yourself, and your body responds. Well, I believe it's the same way with dogs. I last winter, about 2 months ago, we had really bad cold. It was like 40 degrees, wind chill below zero. And I brought every one of my freaking dogs in the house, which it was terrible, but they hated it, man. They're all panting, and I'd let them out during the day. They have it pretty good. They have, like I said, everybody has like a 3-sided manger, inside that there's an igloo dog house, and I stuff it with shavings and straw. But I can tell my dogs that live outside 24/7, they're just stronger. Like I said, laying down is not what a dog was meant to do. Not laying down in a little crate where it can just turn around. Even if you let it loose in your house, what's the dog going to do when you're not home? If it's destroying your house, you're not going to let it sit in there for very long. But most of them are just going to lay on the couch or lay on the carpet, and they're not going to do nothing. So it's just like people, use it or lose it. If they're not using it, their bone density, their tendons, their muscle, their cardiovascular system, it's all going to get weak. It's going to deteriorate. And that's like the message of the new cutting edge research shows that people that work out live longer, have stronger bones, their heart, their cancer rate, everything goes way down. And it's no different than a dog. A dog, if you got a dog that's exercised and runs and is constantly outside, has to eat more food when it gets cold and eat less food when it gets hot and deal with the elements, they're a lot stronger. I think it's a huge, huge difference.
Okay.
I like having a dog in the house. I always have several dogs in my house, but I don't like to leave them in the house for months at a time because I work. So if I go to work for 8 hours, 10 hours, they're just in a crate. What can they do? They're bored. Whereas they're outside, they got tons of stuff to do. They can run and play and whatever, dig, destroy trees. That's all, like working out. Just standing,
Right.
I take care of horses too. I have a friend who's a vet that has these expensive dressage warm blood horses, and she has 4 of them. So two days, sometimes 3 a week, I take care of her horses, and I can see their mood changes. If it's nice outside, they spent all day in their paddock and they come in, they're different than if they're cooped up for 4 days in their stall and they get to go to a little exercise pen and then go back to their stall. It makes a huge difference.
Sure.
I'm the same way. If I'm stuck at home and I can't do anything, I get crabbier. I don't feel as good. When I'm out moving around, and doing stuff, I don't have as many aches and pains, and I have not lived the super cardiovascular, workout lifestyle my whole life. I used to work all the freaking time, and it wasn't physical labor, so.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised, how quickly the human body can turn around.
Oh, yeah.
It constantly renews itself.
Oh, yeah. I'm not a skinny mini by any stretch of the imagination, but I was a lot heavier before I started doing this CrossFit about almost 4 years ago now. And I'm pretty consistent with it. I don't know why. I freaking love it. I love to do that. If I was retired and didn't work, I'd do it 5 days a week.
I do Jeet Kune Do. It's the martial arts form that was created by Bruce Lee. And I've done it under 2 different schools, and the later school made me like an apprentice instructor. And the hard part is finding students that are serious. But honestly, if I go too long without training, man, I get grumpy. If I don't hit the pads, or, even as far as catching a few in the face, with boxing gloves on, of course, but the shock of that is therapeutic even. Just rumbling a a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not a CrossFit champion or anything like that, but, the older people, the cool thing about CrossFit, when you're older, you can modify everything. So if you can't do muscle ups, you do other stuff. But
Right.
I found just everything, my mood to everything, my body. I'm not saying I look like an Adonis for any stretch of the imagination, but my whole body's changed, the whole
Sure.
way it looks. And I'm so much stronger than I was even 15 years ago. Like,
Sure.
I sometimes have a dog, I can't get to the leash, and I don't usually put collars on my dogs. So instead of going inside and rummaging to find, I just grab the dog, and walk to the other yard I want to put it in. And some of my dogs are 100 pounds, 90 pounds, 80-pound bitch.
Just yoke them
I
right
can
up.
remember 15 years ago, if I did that, man, I would be winded, and I would be it would be tough to walk, half an acre with the dog. And I'm almost 60, and I frickin' do that all the time. I throw 50-pound bags of dog food over my shoulder and walk an acre, 2 acres to get to the dog yard. And like I said, 10, 15 years ago, I could not do that. So
That's a beautiful thing, man. That's a really beautiful thing. Let me ask you this, though. As far as... So we touched on grit and, the improvement of body type. Sometimes I got this one female. Now I only have 3 dogs, but this one female, no matter what the hell I do, she has skin issues. I mean, we've spent so much money at the vet. We've done everything. Do you think that living indoors could be a detriment as far as things like that?
I think so. I think so. I'm not a scientist. I don't have any peer-reviewed papers I've read on it. But I've had dogs that I've kept, I've sold a pup to somebody as a pet, and then I've kept, the brother. And I know, I like to keep in contact with all the people. So, and I've had people like, oh, so-and-so is allergic to chicken. He's got allergies. He's allergic to chicken. Or the neighbor put out some stuff in his grass and the dog has bumps. We had to give him antibiotics. And have you had skin trouble with your dog? And I'm like, no, but my dog has been out in the dirt. It's been raised in the dirt, in the rough and tough. And it's the same like with kids. A lot of kids have these food allergies now. They're allergic to peanuts and allergic to peanut butter and this and that. Well, there's research that shows that if you expose your kids to a lot of this different stuff, they don't have the allergies. And they also say that kids can grow up with a weakened immune system if they're kept too clean. The world is just millions of microbes. The dirt, everything. There's microbes everywhere. And, back in the day when I was a kid, it wasn't that weird for kids to be, entertain themselves with making mud pies or jumping in a huge mud puddle and just being covered in dirt. Your mom might not be thrilled about it, but it was fairly common.
Right.
Nobody does that shit anymore.
No,
Kids
they
don't even
don't.
go outside. So it's, I think it's like anything, use it or lose it. If there's not a pressure, work, pain, discomfort, your body doesn't get strong. Like these UFC fighters, they say that their bone density is just insane. And it's because they've, been punching and slamming each other and throwing each other and doing that. So their body has responded and made their bone density stronger. Some of them dudes, they'll fight. Even though they have gloves on, they have a broken hand, they'll fight. They'll fight another 3 rounds. So, yeah, I think the dogs raised outside, there's a difference. Like if just thrown outside, sitting in a 10 by 10 pen. Yeah, no, I don't think dogs walking around on their own poop all day doing nothing are going to be
Of course
a whole
not.
lot better off. But like I said, my yards, or some of them are 1/3 of an acre, half acre, and they got tons of room to run and do anything they want. Even if you don't have that much room, if I had the money to hire a staff, if money was no object, my dog, I mean, that's probably all I do is get treadmills and send dogs off to trainers and work them, go hog hunting, just do all kinds of stuff. That would be Shangri-La for me. I'd love to, even my dogs are in good shape and all that stuff. They're just exercising themselves because I'm not taking them anywhere. But I've conditioned a couple dogs pretty good. My dog Clyde, when he was young, I wanted to prove that he could breathe good and do so. I'd make these videos. I'd taught him to run next to my bike, and I'd videotape him, and I'd take a picture of my phone and show that it's 98 degrees outside. And so I got Clyde in some pretty insane shape. I used to run a four-wheeler too, and I'd run, my property's pretty long. I'd run all the way to the back of my property, and he was goofy. Like he just liked to run the four-wheeler. So I pushed him. I got him to a point where he was like a super athlete. Like he was in tip-top, incredible shape. And as a matter of fact, I wouldn't even take pictures of him because I took a picture or two of him, and I got all these people like, oh my God, the dog's starving. Because, 3 of his ribs would show, and he had 0 body fat.
Oh man, that's a beautiful thing. They don't understand. They don't understand. Like I saw this image on Instagram, and this dog man showed 3 athletes, human athletes, that were pulling weight with the parachute thing behind them, running really fast, And you could see their ribs, you could see veins in their arms, you could see the whole 9 yards. But when we apply that to dogs, they say, no, that's abuse. And it's just like, how is that abuse? Like, if I don't see, now my dogs are house dogs, but I tell my wife sometimes that, no, take the food down a little bit. Sometimes she'll overfeed them. I'll say, even as a house dog, if I can't at least see the bottom rib, we got an issue. My dogs are not conditioned to be, extremely athletic, but if I can at least see the bottom rib, we have an issue. And I really don't like that, because what people don't understand is the more weight you put on a dog, the more stress you put on their hips, their joints, all these other things. And they wonder why they get dysplasia, because your fur mom pet home dog if you look at it from above, it looks like a straight shot from shoulders to hips instead of an hourglass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's, there's a genetic component too. Like my dogs, the first dog I line bred on was a female I had called Broadzilla. She was a daughter of that dog Tyson I was telling you about that was 3/4 Johnson. He had a big, huge jack-o'-lantern head. He was 135 pounds. And then her mother was 100% Johnson female called Sally, Mustang Sally. And Broadzilla, that was my first foundation dog. She was like my 3rd female and 4th or 5th American Bulldog that made the grade that I thought I would breed. And I just thought she was the shit back then, because she was a very extreme, muscled, tight dog. Like she had 0 body fat. And she did not get worked out. And at that time I lived in town, and she was a dog, lived in the crate. When I come home from work, then I'd work or exercise or let her run in the yard. But if I cut her food back, you'd see 2 or 3 ribs. If I cut it back more, she still ate a lot of food, but you could see like 2 or 3 of her backbone. Like she had the craziest muscle. Like she had 0 body fat. Even when she got fat, she didn't look fat. She just looked thicker. And so she had super good hips. She was the first bully champion American Bulldog in the country. That's when they first started doing shows, and that's when they first separated the breed back in '97. Whereas there's a standard type and a bully type. And I just so happened to start showing her, and she became the first bully champion. So she was a cool looking dog. She had her faults, she wasn't perfect, but she had incredibly tight hips, and she had this zero freaking body fat and just chunky muscle. She was, I can't even, and it's very common now. And back then it was her. She was like a totally different type than my other dogs and any Johnson dog I'd seen. And then I found this, I sold a dog to this guy in Illinois, and he kept telling me about this dog that was from Stumpy and Brahma. And I'd seen litters off of Stumpy and Brahma, and I didn't like them. And then he sent me a video of the dog, and the dog's name is Mufasa. I became really good friends with his owner, Kenny. And Mufasa was the first dog I'd seen that looked like my dog, Broadzilla, but he was the male version of her. He had thick, huge slabs of tight muscle, and just proportionately a thick dog. He's like 115, 112 pounds, very low body fat and chunky, like an English Bulldog cobbiness, but not English Bulldog fat. He was, I don't know what it is. If it was a combination of pit bull genes, I don't know. Maybe the Greyhound. Maybe that's what did it. But I line bred on Broadzilla. I tried my damnedest to breed her to him, but they were both so muscle bound. I don't know if he just couldn't tie. He tied other females. He couldn't tie her. And so I had to artificial inseminate them, and I did it 3 times and never got puppies. And then I just bred her to her uncle, and she had a litter, and she never got pregnant unless a male tied her. Mm-hmm. So I bred her 4 times. I inbred her to her uncle, her nephew, and then I inbred her to another nephew, and then I outcrossed her to this big male that went back to that Man of War blood Vindicator. And then her last breeding, I took a half brother, half sister. One of them was from the inbred litter, a dog called Shango, and then the female was from the outcross litter called Vinzilla. And I produced this big, beautiful dog called Groucho, not Gaucho. I produced Gaucho too, but this dog's name was Groucho because he had Groucho Marx eyebrows. And he was like 120, beautiful structured dog, big head, cool dog. And the last time I bred her to her double grandson. So it was like an inbreeding, but it was stepped back a couple, one generation. So I line bred and inbred on that female, and I used Mufasa too. Like I would breed Broadzilla kids to Mufasa kids. That was my little formula. And so I've locked in a lot of that crazy muscle stuff. And now it's prevalent in the breed. Now you get that type quite a bit, where they're pretty chunky. They're kind of sour mud looking dogs, but they're tight skinned and pretty muscular.
Sure.
Like I said, that's what everybody wants. And now my final goal is to produce an extreme dog, but has a higher degree of functionality, can breathe better, and like I said, go on hikes, walk with their owners and go camping with them.
Sure.
And just live an active lifestyle. They don't have to be a hog dog. They don't have to be the best catch dog in the world, and it's my goal because I see the trend. It's not going to change. You're not going to change people's, as I could talk till I'm blue in the face about working and what's the true American Bulldog and what's true to type and blah, blah, blah. But the truth is the standard type dogs, which are awesome dogs, the puppies aren't in demand as much. And the bully type dogs that are extreme and not as healthy as far as cardiovascular stuff, they are in demand. Like I said, 80%, I bet, of all the dogs sold, they're that extreme bully type. So my final goal is to produce an extreme bully type dog that is more functional, a higher functioning extreme bully type. I don't want a 1 or 2 inch muzzle like a lot of the bully dogs. The standard in the American Bulldog for the bully side calls for a 2 to 3 inch muzzle and 25 to 30% of the overall head length. And if you took a ruler to all the extreme bully dogs, they'd be way under that. There's some extreme bully dogs that have a 2-inch muzzle, but they're big dogs, 100-pound, 90-pound, 110-pound dogs, but they only have a 2-inch muzzle, which proportionately they should have a 3-inch muzzle, 2.5, 2 3/4 at least. And some of the extreme ones nowadays have under a 2-inch muzzle, like 1 3/4 or 1.5 inches. And, that's not true to type, because there's never been a standard written that describes a dog having that short of a muzzle. So, and even Mr. Johnson's, English Bulldog crosses, the first 1-2 generations, he may have had some, but I've never seen a picture of him. And, the Incredible Me Machine, he was a bully dog, and he was 25% English Bulldog or better.
Right.
And he had probably a 2.25-inch muzzle at least. The Mean Machine, which I think was one of the prettiest dogs Johnson ever produced, I think he produced really well too. He probably had a 2.5 to 2 3/4-inch muzzle. But, the length of the muzzle, to me, I've seen dogs that they have a huge bully head, but they got a long muzzle, but the muzzle's so thick to the very chin, wide, broad chin, that it looks cool, It doesn't
Right. Okay. So your basic message here, and which I'm a huge fan of, by the way, is you can still get these bully features. You could still get these nice, thick, bully, scary-looking dogs. But when you just add the extra muzzle, you can also get the performance. Because it's like, what did my good friend Lee say? He said it was like it's almost like the temperature control unit almost of the dog's body.
Oh yeah.
So I mean,
that's
like,
how they do themselves.
Why not? I mean, that was one thing I've always said. It's just like I'm a spoiled asshole. Like I want the performance, but I want that big blocky head. I want the big shoulders and the big rear. You know what I mean? And the really possible, wide rib cage.
I had to go through all kinds of stuff. I have a dog that I bought from a friend of mine. I have a good friend for like the last 30 years. He lives here in Missouri, and he's had my dogs. He was always enamored with this humongous dog I had. I started out with, I called him Boomer. His name was Rebel Machines Explosion. He was 7/8 Johnson off of a 100% Johnson dog called Peeler's Chief. And it comes off that Rebel Rouser stuff. Well, anyway, he was like a throwback to the St. Bernard or whatever the hell Johnson put in there. Because he was 29 inches at the shoulder. Back when I had him, I was embarrassed that he was so tall, because the standard at the time, 27, 28 inches was tops. And he was exactly, his withers was 29 inches. He was 148 pounds. He had a 3-inch muzzle, but it was thick. And he wasn't everybody's cup of tea. Like I said, the bully movement came, and those type of dogs nobody wanted.
Right.
There was always the 100% Johnson or the Johnson guys that wanted a big, huge monster dog like Johnson. Mr. Johnson is quoted as saying, he'd like a 200-pound bulldog. If he could throw a saddle over the back, more, that'd be better. So he wanted huge. I don't know if it was because he just loved big dogs, or if he was the ultimate marketer. Americans, I think everybody.
Sure, some people, just want a dog. Some people want a lot of dog. When it comes down to it, which I'm still toying with the idea of just, not on a large scale, but, bringing a band dog type dog for myself. That's the reason I got a Boer Bull. He's got a big, blocky, like American Bulldog head, but he's got a long muzzle. And it's not a bad looking muzzle, but the reason I chose that was because it's already a hot weather breed. The way they're bred is to be in the heat. I don't know whether me and you have discussed some potential ideas of possibly crossing it with American Bulldog, I've thought about pit bull. I've thought about all kinds of things, but I wanted to just basically take this dog because I think he looks perfect, but I want a more athletic version of it. A speedier.
There's a couple of guys I've seen that I've seen on message boards that have done the cross, and I think it's with the bully type American Bulldog though. So I forget there was a guy I sold a dog 2 years ago. He's a dog transporter. I don't know why I can't remember his name, but he did it. And then there's a guy I think in Vegas that did Borbal to American Bulldogs, but I've never seen. I think somebody posted pictures of puppies. I've never seen what it was. It's kind of a weird thing because they're kind of a parallel breed because in the Dutch settlers in southern Africa, you know, they wanted that dog to be a farm dog. I think that's what Borbal means, farm dog.
Yeah, that's what it means. That's what it means in Dutch. Yeah.
Yeah. So they, well, you know, I don't think they were catching wild hogs or anything, but they were killing baboons and leopards and guarding the farm.
Yeah, so, they also used them to guard the diamond mines. Yeah.
I think they imported a lot of bull mastiff or English mastiffs, and I think they just crossed them with all kinds of stuff.
I don't know. I think some of the background of that could have something to do with the American Bulldog itself. I mean, you think about it. Now, maybe not the original Borbal, but like what we see today, I see a lot of American Bulldog traits.
Yeah, you know, I remember that guy, John Blackwell, that was into American Bulldogs. He was a pretty outspoken guy back in the day. He was in the breed for a little while, and he had Dog de Bordeaux, and he's the guy that he bought dogs from Johnson, and he was heavy into it, and he had gotten out of the Borbals. He claimed he had 2 females that he could never get pregnant, and he bred them to one of a Johnson dog called Dick the Bruiser II, and produced these crosses. They're in some of these this Canine Bodyguard book. You can see pictures of them, and that's where they
called it the Borbal to the Johnson cross. They actually started calling that the American Bandog Mastiff. And one registry, that's what they call it. I can't remember the registry. A friend of mine sent it to me, but there's actually a registry where if it's a Borbal crossed to the Bully type or Johnson type American Bulldog, they call it the American Bandog, like GGE, American Bandog Mastiff.
Well, this was a Dog de Bordeaux crossed to an American, and it produced a pretty famous weight pull dog called Whopper. And Whopper, started, he went into all these, they call them American Pull Dogs or some Oklahoma Bulldogs, and some of them were registered with the ADBA, and you know all about it. I think you did an interview with a guy that now that breed has kind of gone into, I think now isn't that breed called the American Pit Bulldog?
No, so some of the Whopper dogs, some of the there's a bunch of them, but a lot of them, they've cleaned up the breed. There was questionable bloodlines in the ADBA that were registered as American Pit Bull Terriers, but they were way too big. But they were more your weight pull dogs. So ADBA.
There was a guy in Oklahoma that got that dog from Blackwell. His name was Eddie Eddington. And
that's it. Eddington's Whopper, right?
Yeah. And supposedly he was like the guru of early weight pull with pit bulls. And he just wanted a bigger dog to pull in the higher weight classes because he pulled pit bulls. And supposedly he was a beloved guy in weight pull. A lot of people really respected him. He had a lot of knowledge. And so the ADBA, you know, gave him carte blanche, and I think he crossed all that stuff into his pit bulls.
Yeah.
And created these big weight bulldogs.
It was 2015. 2015 they said, I'm pulling it up here. 2015 was the reclassification where they took, okay, American Pit Bull Terrier should basically stay in a lane of its own, but these bigger dogs they started calling working pit bulldogs. And but afterwards they cleaned them up though. Like they now the ones I'm seeing now, there's a few that I see on Instagram, a few different camps where they look like just larger game dogs. They really do, and they're doing a lot of man work too. And they're calling them working pit bulldogs. But I'm fascinated by them.
It's interesting because the American Bulldog, the original name was the American Pit Bulldog.
Right.
And then it dropped a pit. So those are called the working American Pit Bulldog, which I've heard great things too. I have a friend that's in Alaska that was he was a big time in the early performance American Bulldogs, and he's got that stuff. I forget the name of the kennel he got one of his dogs from was Fireline or Firehouse or something.
Yeah,
like
Fireline.
That.
There's Unleashed is one I came across. Unleashed Kennels. Swamp Donkeys is one that I follow on Instagram, and I've talked to him a bunch. I really want to get them on. They don't look as, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but they don't look as sloppy as the Whopper dog and all that. They literally look like taller, the same proportion game dogs. They look like they kind of look like UKC dogs, but a bit taller. But they're extremely man focused, and they'll pull weight like no get out. I mean, these dogs they're really incredible, but there's very few camps that are doing it. I did an interview with Carl Burton. He calls his kennel Dragon Dog Kennels. And he has this dog, Nightshade. It's just one of those dogs, man, that, holy shit, dude. Like, it's impressive. It's very impressive. They took, basically, in my opinion, the UKC, basically what you would call the show-type pit bull, is what it kind of looks like, only bigger. And a lot of it comes from... I know there's Mastiff back in there, and I know there's game dogs back in there, but these dogs are, they're on fire, and I really want to get a hold of one of them. There's a bunch of dogs I want to get a hold of, but I really want to get a hold of one of them.
I looked at my friend's pedigree, and I noticed they went back to some of the Whopper dogs, the Camelot dogs. All those dogs, I think, were just basically either American Bulldog bred to Doggy Bordeaux,
and like we talked about before, Camelot, Watchdog, that was another one.
Dagger,
Dagger, yep.
Pretty impressive, big looking, awesome looking dogs. It's shocking too, because I know the Doggy Bordeaux is in there, and the Johnson American Bulldog, and those are two sloppy dogs. Where these dogs, like you said, they're tight. They're tight, yeah. Wise, they look like a giant pit.
Yeah, and they're ready. I've seen them do. I've seen these working pit bulldogs, as the ADBA calls them. I've seen them doing man work, and I'm thoroughly impressed. Like, this to me, to a guy who's not involved in game dogs or whatever. This to me, as I want man dogs. I want man focused dogs. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that shows you the power of outcrossing and selecting for work and selection. They took, I'm sure if you added up the percentage, they're probably a high percentage of pit bull, but because they have that Mastiff blood in there, it increases the size and the man aggression. And probably makes a heck of a working dog.
Some of them still have to be kept apart, though. Some of them still, from what I hear, you still can't keep a male with a male. You still can't keep a female with a female. They'll still go at it.
Yeah, they got a lot of game dog in there. A lot of pit, even UKC pit and Amstaffs from the 1930s. I'm not sure what blood Eddie Eddington I wasn't that into, researching what his pit bulls were, but I think they were kind of similar to the watchdog stuff, Hemp Hill stuff, bred with some UKC, Pit, Amstaff show dogs. But I know that dog Chevy and a couple other ones down off a Whopper, set records. And I saw that dog pull, and I've seen pictures of him, that Chevy Red or something was his name, I think.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
He just looked like that UKC Pit, but huge and thick, and it just looks like he could just bust through a brick wall. They were really big, impressive dogs.
And that's the problem I have with the new bully movement is some of the XL camps are still holding strong, but they got to understand, a lot of people getting into bullies got to understand some of these bloods went into the XL bully stuff, and they want them to be, my buddy Craig Spice does the XL bullies, and even he said it. He's like, they want them to be couch ornaments, but these dogs come from lines that would bite the shit out of you. Like, these were no nonsense dogs back then.
I would bet that there's Pressa in there and English Mastiff.
Corso, you name it. Yeah, there's a lot of it back in there. Because they wanted bigger bullier. Well, they wanted the bigger bully style, quote unquote, pit bulls. But these dogs would bite you. Like, these were not soft dogs. Now the problem I have today, like especially with the bully movement, is that they're forgetting that, like where their background comes from. And then when somebody gets bit, they're like, oh, we never thought he would do that. It's like, well, that's because you didn't check the blood of the dog that you were purchasing. You know what I mean?
They say the Mastiff blood usually throws more of the civil drive that is more of a man fighter, more than the game dog. Usually, there's been some game dogs that are man aggressive, but they're not. They used to never be bred for. They would just shoot and kill that type of dog. There was always a wise tale or just a belief system that dogs that are pit bulls that are human aggressive aren't game. They'll never be game.
Right.
Which, I mean, that's not really true, because there's some famous pit bulls that are human aggressive. But
yeah, but for me, for a guy who is, I'm into survival, I'm into protecting my house, things like that. That's why I originally got into the bully stuff in the first place. Back when I got interested in dogs on that level was because we had back then we had a $30,000 recording studio to protect, and I mean, I didn't want an American Pit Bull Terrier straight game bred to do it, because the person could have robbed the whole studio and then just grabbed the dog, and he would have been like, all right, where are we going? Where are we going? All right, cool, yeah, let's go.
Oh yeah, I mean, a game dog's not supposed to be human aggressive. It's supposed to be totally not. If the dog bit somebody in the pit, they were instantly killed.
Right.
So, and I like that about bulldogs. But I know Johnson dogs, they've always, early on when they were doing sport work, those guys out in California that did the first shits and dogs, and Kyle Sims and a lot of the guys that bred those first, what they call hybrid, they always talked about the Johnson dogs had the man aggression, the civil drive. That Rip and Woody was a nutbag. He had a big bucket head. He was a big dog. And like they said, he put the bite into a beagle. Well, it's funny because it's pretty well known. It's not confirmed, but it's pretty well known. Johnson put a lot of big stuff in there. And it's pretty obvious that he's putting St. Bernard in there because he produced, there's a dog called Red Machine 3, Red Machine 25. They look more like a St. Bernard than an American Bulldog. Anybody that's not just totally bias and lying to themselves. I mean, down to the color. The only thing that they didn't have is the full-length coat. They have a shorter coat, but everything, their feet, their conformation, their tail, their markings, everything looks like a St. Bernard. And then there's a dog, I forget his name. He's actually brindle. He's brindle and white. And he just died, I think, not too long ago. He's pretty sought after, 100% Johnson dog. And he's like was 140 pounds. And I mean, if you put a little barrel under his chin, he'd look just like a St. Bernard to me. I mean, and many people that see the picture can see that there's St. Bernard in there. And I never knew this, but over the years, I've run into different people that told me they had St. Bernard that they had to put down because it was too man aggressive, which I never would have thought. I know Cujo, that was a make-believe story, but evidently St. Bernard have some
Beethoven.
And that they contribute the Johnson dog being like that to Mastiff blood, which English Mastiffs, they're different because some of them are so big they just don't have the energy to do much. But early Bull Mastiffs, they're the gamekeeper's night dog. They were to hold people, keep them from poaching on Lord's acreage. So right. They were bred for that. And of course, Connie Corsos, I've heard recently that they're the number one breed that's killed people. So they evidently have some protectiveness to them or craziness to them or something. And presses, I've heard, have been pretty, they can be pretty hot. So,
yeah. Well, a friend of mine who I just recently did a live for his new channel, we're recording our interview tomorrow. He's a good friend of mine who has been into presses forever. And he straight up told me with his own mouth, like, I don't keep animals that can't kill me. He's got cobras. He's got all these different insane animals. But for him, he says Pressa is just the one. It's his number one favorite breed. He won't deal with any other breed, really. And I mean, we all got our taste, but it's because he loves the Pressa so much because it is the hottest, like, of the Mastiff breeds. It is the nastiest. And it hasn't been so, the Corso has had a split, just like every other breed. For the dogs that are popular and bred for show, but you still have your working Corsos. The Preza, on the other hand, it hasn't been so washed out yet. They're still very much thriving, and they're still very much a dangerous animal. Which, I mean, I love that. But, like I said before, my goal for having dogs is... I'm just a paranoid individual, I think it's better to have a dog than not have a dog, just like I think it's better to have a firearm than not have a firearm. It's just the way it is.
I live out in the country by myself most of the time, so I have guns, and I don't really even count on my dogs to do anything, but they've warned me. I don't really like to breed dogs that are too quick to go. I mean, I prefer actually the old pit bull type of bulldog that won't hurt a kid, and might not attack a woman, but might be suspicious of a man.
Well, that's the reason why before when me and you were talking, I said that I had, because of you, I kind of have more of a preference towards a good working American Bulldog as opposed to a game-bred pit bull to cross to my boar bull, because I want that smarts still there. I don't want, if a kid runs up on my property, if the pit bull blood is mixed into my stock, it might just go just for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. If you see an old person who's lost, and I don't want my dog to just think, oh, kill it. immediately. I want my dog to think, what's going on? Okay, like, let me assess the situation. And I do think that after talking to you and Bruce Huffmaster and a bunch of people who, Daniel Taylor, a bunch of people who are involved in the American Bulldog, I do think they have a little more sense about them to where they'll say, okay, this is not an immediate threat. I don't need to just jump on this thing.
They should have more common sense, but there's been some Johnson dogs that, like there was a dog called the Rebel Rouser, and he was a dog that Johnson sold to these people, young people that lived in New York City. They lived like on the 5th floor of this tenement building, and Johnson told me that the guy would have his friends jump in off the fire escape when the dog was a puppy and hit it with wiffle ball bats to get it keyed up. Well, they did it to the wrong dog because the dog grew up, and I guess at 9 months, there was some people arguing on the street, and they had the window down in their car, and the dog jumped out and bit the guy. And the final straw was they lived on the 5th floor, and the dog hated men. I mean, hated men. And the wife got on the elevator to go down to, walk him. And some guy came up and she said, please, my dog hates men. Could you wait for the next elevator? And he was like, screw you. And he got in there. When the door shut, Rebel Rouser, Johnson called him Rebel Rouser. His name was actually Titan. He bit the guy and broke his hand. And they contacted Johnson because they loved the dog and said, they're going to come destroy this dog because he's a guy. And they said, if you want him, just pay for his shipping and we'll get him to the airport.
Well, I mean, that guy's an asshole, though, at the end of the day. I mean, come on. Really? She asked you nicely. What the fuck?
Yeah, the guy shouldn't have got on. But, he probably thought, I'm not afraid of dogs. Well, and a lot of people would say that is just they trained him wrong. They shouldn't have had people jump, which is true. They shouldn't have. But it is such a genetic thing because I'll tell you the whole story here. They got him. Mr. Johnson had to sign a certified letter from them that the dog is 100% his. They refuse, are not responsible for anything that happens to the dog from that point on. I called Andrew Robinson that lived close to Johnson, and he would help Mr. Johnson out. He and Mr. Johnson went to the airport to pick this dog up, and they brought a little red wagon, and they put the crate on the little red wagon and got it to the truck. And that guy told me that he said it was scary because that dog, it was a plastic crate. He said that freaking dog, and if a man came close to it, he would like flip the crate. And so they get him to Johnson's house, and they had a female called Colette the 10th that was in heat, and they brought the crate up to the gate and opened the gate. He went in there, and they shut the gate. And so he bred Colette the 10th, and she got pregnant. Well, a few weeks after that, they wanted to get her out because another female was in heat. So he didn't know how to do it because if Mrs. Johnson walked up to the dog, she was fine. She could actually go in there and dump his water and fill up his bucket, food bucket, and he wouldn't do anything to her. But Mr. Johnson, if he got within 10 feet of the fence, the dog would flip out, not bark, want to kill him, want to get through the chain link fence and kill him. So when they he called the vet and said, well, how can I do this? Can you get tranquilizers, a dart gun or something? So they hit this dog with tranquilizers and got Colette the 10th out, and they stuck a female in there that was in heat. Mm-hmm. And when the tranquilizers wore off, this dog lost his fucking mind. He went up to the chain link gate, and this isn't bullshit because I saw the gate. I was at his house like 5 or 6 months after this happened. He took this chain link gate, a 5-foot chain link gate, and just twisted all the chain link up like a pretzel and broke the bottom bar. And when he got out of there, there was one other gate he had to get to, and Mr. Johnson tells the story. He'd be in the general population, and this dog was a man killer. So he called his neighbor, who I have a feeling maybe shot a couple other dogs for him too. And he said that, the guy's a sharpshooter. He came over and shot him twice and killed him. Well, that litter, the litter with Colette the 10th, produced my old dog's father, this dog called Peeler's Chief. Peeler's Chief has bred quite a bit. And a lot of those dogs, those Rebel Rouser dogs, were really sought after because they were big. Because that Colette the 10th was from Elrod, who was a 140-pound dog, and she was big herself. So they produced really big dogs. And Johnson kept 3 of those pups, this big, huge, funky-looking female called Rebelette. And then he kept Rebel Rouser 2 and Rebel Rouser 3. Rebel Rouser 3 was a beautiful dog, normal size, like 90 pounds. Rebel Rouser 2, he got to be like 140. He just looked like a big, slothy, fat mastiff. And but he wasn't mean. He just seemed mean. Well, Peeler's Chief was bred to a lot of 100% Johnson dogs, and some that had a little bit of painter in them. And he produced this dog, I think, called Buster, that they sold in Oklahoma, in Ohio. And the people had a lawn service, and they forgot to bring the dog in. So the guy opened the gate and drove his mower back there and got attacked. And they weren't home. So the neighbor called and said that their dog was running loose, and they got him back in the yard. But there's a sweatshirt on the ground full of blood. Turned out the guy went to the hospital because he'd gotten attacked by this dog. So they didn't put the dog down. They sold him. And a friend of mine, Jose Lopez, is a well-known American Bulldog breeder in California. He bought him. And so Jose was young back then, and his big thing was he liked really huge American Bulldogs. And he was part of this Redwood American Bulldog Club that was an American Bulldog Club that did a lot of sport work, bite work, and stuff like that. And some of the decoys and trainers were the guys that did the first Schutzen trained titled American Bulldogs. So he gets this big bad dog, and he's like, yeah, this dog freaking has live bites and all this stuff. So they get Buster and take him, and these decoys, they're not yahoos. These aren't just guys that put on a sleeve. These are guys that have titled dogs at the top, the top of the Schutzen IPO, whatever they're calling it. And so they tested that dog Buster and determined that he was a fear biter, which all civil dogs, a lot of man-aggressive dogs, they're that way because they're suspicious and they're a little fearful, and that's why they'll bite. They think, hey, this guy is a threat. Anyway, he ended up selling the dog to this guy, Sean Chris, and he bred the shit out of the dog. And that dog, Peeler's Chief, when Jack Peeler had him, he was fine. And so Jack Peeler retired and gave all his dogs and his house and everything to his son. His son was an old pit bull guy. He actually went to prison for a little bit, or went to jail for getting caught fighting dogs. Anyway, so he wasn't some idiot that didn't know anything about dogs. He got into Peeler's Chief's pen, and I don't know why, but he had to move him or something. So he grabbed him by the collar and was trying to move him, and Chief wasn't having that. So Chief attacked him to the point where he was barely so weak he could barely hold the dog anymore from getting bit up. And just by chance, his friend came by, and then where the Peeler's house was, I'd been there a couple times. I mean, it's Oklahoma, and it is so remote. Literally, when you turn off the road to go up his driveway, it takes about 10 or 15 minutes to get to his house. That's how far off the road they live. So this guy's friend showed up and saved him. Well, they sold that dog to another guy that was pretty big in the breed in California, called Matt Boyd. Matt Boyd had a fish tank company, and he had a partner. They serviced all these big fish tanks, and so that guy was his partner, and he'd been around all of his dogs. He'd been around Chief, and everything. And there was never a problem. Well, they went out of town, and his partner came to take care of the dogs, and he got in there with Chief, and Chief decided that he was going to kill him. And same thing, he escaped, with just bad bites, and then they put Peter's Chief down. But